Hey there YouTube, this is Brain Freeze Laser bringing you a video about design and balance. A phrase that's often heard in the TCG world that, you or your friends may have said at one point is, that card is too powerful, but that card is too weak. Now, that's technically not true. Well, both phrases are technically not true, but they're also technically true in the fact that there is a time and a place to use particular cards. Now, what I mean by this is, you take a card like Charcoal-Impachi that seems really weak. He's a 1-star normal monster with 2100 defense. Now, 2100 defense is pretty high. So let's compare him to, let's say, Big Shield Gardna, who has an effect where if he's targeted while face down, he flips up and negates the card, the spell card. And then he has a 2600 defense. But if he gets attacked, he gets put into attack mode, and he has a really weak attack. So he has a negative side to him, but he's a lot more powerful in perspective to Charcoal-Impachi. What Charcoal-Impachi has going for him is that he is a 1-star monster, so you can normal set him, you can normal summon him if you really wanted to, I guess. But the thing about it is you can set him as a bluff. You can set him and somebody might think he's your Sangan or he's your, Raikou or something, and then they'll swing into it, going, yeah, I'm going to lose my little guy or whatever, but I still got my Cyber Dragon. Or they might target my Cyber Dragon with his effects, so I'll attack with him first, and then they'll target my next guy that I'm going to swing in with, and then they're in for a big surprise because Charcoal has 2100 defense. So if they swung in with their Cyber Dragon first, nothing happens, and now they got to sit there and go, well, crap, I can't hit him with my next guy because he's too small. Or if they swung in with a little guy first, then they're going to take some damage. So that's an advantage that card has, and it's kind of overlooked because nobody really sets cards anymore. The meta's kind of fast now, and there's combos that just clear the whole board. So he's kind of weak in that perspective, but in the perspective of just a monster in its own right, he has a high defense, and that's kind of a surprise attack, sort of. You set him and your opponent hits it, and if it wasn't a Cyber Dragon, they're going to take damage, and if it was, you broke even, and now you have a setup for, whatever, a Synchro or a Sack Monster or something. Okay, so that's a good comparison of a card designed a particular manner. Now cards may have been designed for a particular format. Sealed exists in Yu-Gi-Oh! Draft exists in Yu-Gi-Oh! So if you go to a sealed event, you have to know what the set is. You have to know what cards are in the set, what monsters are available, what removal is available. If the set has no removal to get rid of face-down cards, or no removal to get rid of the monster completely without any stipulation, then Charcoal-Impachi then becomes a powerful card because of the way that he was designed, or the way that his set was designed. And then again, he becomes powerful. So like, he was in Battle Pack Epic Dawn, and in Battle Pack Epic Dawn there's a lot of cards in that set, so the odds of your opponent packing a Raigeki or a Shield Crush are pretty low. And there are a lot of big defense monsters in that set. So the chances of you packing a high defense creature or a high defense monster in that set and your opponent not getting removal for that monster is pretty good. You're probably going to have a higher defense creature than their attack, and you're going to come through with a surprise. And since we're on the subject of Battle Pack Epic Dawn, I think that set is a good example of how powerful cards can be in and out of context. Tour Guide is an example of a good card in that set. So Tour Guide is obviously it's powerful. It's in basically every deck. You can put it in every deck. Possessed Dark Soul is also in Battle Pack Epic Dawn. Possessed Dark Soul has the ability to steal all your opponent's level 3 or lower monsters if you tribute Possessed Dark Soul face up. So that's kind of good. And then let's say they have a Tour Guide or a Cyber Valley or a Sangan or any number of level 3 or lower monsters on the board at the time, Battle Fader, whatever. when you bring out your possessed target soul, you can take control of all of them, and you don't have to give them back at the end of the turn. You didn't have to give up anything except the possessed dark soul, so you're plussing, however many monsters -1 essentially. So if you took the whole field of 5 monsters somehow, they had 3 or 5 level 3 monsters on the board, or level 3 or lower monsters on the board, and you gave up your possessed dark soul, you just +4'd off of 1 card. That's a really good card, but that's like a dream scenario. So a scenario that happened to me and my friend, Galactic God, is we were playing and he had a Cyber Valley on board. So I brought out my possessed dark soul and took his Cyber Valley, and then I sacrificed it for my Air Knight. So that was a neat little tech. I got to use possessed dark soul as sort of a mind control or a change of heart or a snatch steal, one of those type of cards, and use his monster however I saw fit. And that's another cool thing about possessed dark soul. It has no stipulation as to what you can do with the monster. So possessed dark soul, I think, is kind of an underrated card in the meta, because I'm pretty sure there's at least 1 or 2 decks that run multiple level 3 or lower monsters, and I know there's quite a few level 3 or lower exceed creatures or monsters, so you can take control of those too, unless they have an effect of negate a effect that targets them or whatever. So that's a pretty good card in context. You look at the card and you go, okay, what can this card do? When is it good for me to use? When is it bad for me to use? And all that. And when I hear somebody say this card is too broken or this card isn't powerful enough, I always go, well, if you think it's too powerful now, imagine what steps the designers had to take to get it to the point that it is now. Maybe when they came out with BLS at first, it was more powerful than it is even now. And it's pretty powerful now. So, or another example is Stratos. Maybe Stratos was a 1900 creature, or maybe he had, maybe he could special summon the monster to the board or something like that. So you have to consider what steps they took to get to that point. And you also have to consider that when a creature or a monster comes out, in a set, and then in a few more sets they come out with something kind of like it, that shows that they learned from the previous monsters that they designed that something was a little too powerful, or something, maybe an effect that a monster had was too powerful, or whatever, and they're not going to do that again because it interacts too well with other things that exist in the meta. A good example of a really powerful, maybe not so much super powerful, but a pretty powerful for the archetype and balanced card is Calm Serenity of Gusto. Now what her effect is once per turn you can shuffle 2 Gusto monsters from your graveyard into your main deck and draw a card. Now that doesn't sound super good, but by the time you bring her out, there will probably already be a few Gusto monsters in your graveyard, and she's going to plus for you, or she's at least going to replace herself in your hand. So you don't lose anything for bringing her out. You bring her out, you shuffle 2 cards into the deck, and then you draw a card, and that's really good because you want the way the Gustos work is you want them to be in the deck, and so that you can special summon them out or whatever. And she has a 1700 attack, which is pretty good. She's a 4-star, and that's good too. So you can just normal summon her, whenever you want. Her weakness is that DD Crow exists. So when you activate her effect, your opponent is able to chain DD Crow to remove one of the targets, and you lose the effect once per turn. You don't really lose anything besides the effect, so that's kind of cool. Whereas, with something like Pot of Avarice, where you have to target all 5 cards, and you're losing Pot of Avarice, that's really a setback. You minus yourself if you do that. But with her, you just lose the effect, and then you have at least a monster on the board, too. The other thing that's kind of weak for her is that she's a psychic-type monster. Maybe if she was a spellcaster or something like that, she'd be a little more viable because they have a little more support. The psychics are kind of weak in the support, category. But other than that, she's a fairly powerful card for the Gusto archetype. She's a wind monster, so that's cool. She gets support from the Mist Valley cards and wind, anything wind that exists right now. She has a fairly moderate attack strength, so it's not like she's gonna get trampled over by a whole lot of things, but she's still fairly weak. And she has a good effect, but it isn't the best effect. It's just fairly powerful for the archetype. And that's a good example of card design that isn't too powerful, but isn't super weak either. So basically, when opening a pack and finding a card that you think is weak, first take into consideration that maybe that card isn't meant to be played in your game type, or maybe your deck. Maybe it's meant to be played in a sealed event, or a draft event, or maybe a particular archetype that hasn't gotten the strength that it needs to compete in the meta. And don't dismiss a card just because it looks weak to you, because it might be very powerful in the right situation. And some cards are like that. A good example of that would be Max C. When Max C came out, nobody really used it. They kind of ignored it. It was only really used in a couple of decks. And then it really picked up steam when Windups came out, because it was an anti card for Windup, and Windup was a top tier meta deck. So even though the card was a secret rare, there wasn't really a place for it yet. Nobody really used it. The people that did use it started to stop using it because nobody was really playing anything that they needed it for. And then Windups came out, and it breathed life into the card again and made it a really powerful option. And then so because people started playing it, Windups died down again. And so then it became a weak card again. And then Windup started to get played again, so now it's powerful again. So it's all relative to the situation, the game type, the deck type, and that's about it. So before excusing a card because you think it's bad, try evaluating it first, and then maybe you'll find out that there are some hidden gems like Possessed Dark Soul in packs that you might actually try playing. Alright guys, and that's about it for this video. I'll be back pretty soon with another video, possibly Friday. I think I'm going to be doing a Monday, Wednesday, Friday deal where I put out a video on those days. I may put one out sooner or shorter videos in between that time. It just depends. And maybe I'll put more up or maybe I won't. But, yep, thanks for watching.